this whole film is just so fascinating. The way that I can't even imagine as an actor receiving the script. And it is such a vision on Ricky's part. I truly have never seen a film like it, and it's very impactful the way that it's done, and it gets you, well, at least it got me. I think because I'm a child, I was born in 1985. So this was my bread and butter. It got me really reflecting on memories and what kind of shaped me as a child, which is something I think that as adults, we really start to reflect upon and really start to understand the impact of our childhood experiences in such a different light. So this was a really cool film to allow that space, allow, you know, the audience to sort of self-reflect on their experiences and the impressions they had as a child. So thank you for your beautiful performances and giving that gift to us. I want to start, this is a very loaded question, but let's just sort of dissect how this film explores generational trauma, you know, caused by societal pressures, especially around gender role expectations. Brian Richard is constantly, a lot of the memories picked up on Jesse's behalf is a lot to do with financial issues, which I think as children of the 80s and 90s, I know that I had a lot of that when growing up. My father talking about, worrying about, thinking about money. And Monica, I thought it was really impactful that we see your character vacuuming quite a lot. And that felt like a very stereotypical gender role. But like, yeah, let's just dive in. Whoever wants to start first.
Yeah, I think that the idea of it being set in the 80s and how, you know, the Reagan years, and which is oftentimes synonymous with kind of consumption, and the Wall Street greed is good, you know, mentality definitely plays its part in this in terms of Richard and how he feels that his station in life is defined by his success, and the success that he can or can't achieve is fueled by how much money in the bank he has. So, you know, I think there's also really an acute awareness of where they are, at least from Richard's point of view, where he is in the strata of class and what he thinks and sees as being beneficial in terms of how people perceive him, having quality stuff. That was always very important to this character in the way that Ricky wrote him. So, yeah, I think setting it, and the fact that it's set in the 80s is indicative of all those characteristics.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking. And I think that, you know, in moments you can kind of villainize Richard for being sort of greedy or caring about material things, but this film really highlights and sheds light on the fact that he's such a product of his time, and that it's really, you know, goes into even toxic masculinity and this like kind of heartbreaking truth of, you know, men of that era, and you know, the internal struggle of like needing to have success.
Yeah. It was really interesting. I didn't get to see the interview, but I read some of it after with Brian, and I guess he said something about how, I'm sorry, not Brian, you're Brian. My brain is absolutely turned off right now. With Ricky, that Brian watched of Ricky, talking about Richard. That he was talking about how speaking of childhood trauma, being in his own apartment, like his childhood apartment, watching people dressed up as his parents reenact scenes from his childhood. I think he said it was a ghostly experience, which is like such a Ricky way of putting it. And I feel like that was very true. There were times where I'd ask him like, how are you doing in this space? And he would just be very like kind of quiet and contemplative and just be like, it's strange, but you know, like he would just kind of be lost in this thought space. And it's interesting to hear him reflect on it too, because like awakening all those things, I think is a complicated endeavor. And also sort of inviting your parents to be a part of that is wild. I mean, I got to meet his mother and she's incredible. And you can see why, you know, he represents her in such a positive way. Brian, did you ever meet his dad?
No, I didn't. And I didn't necessarily feel that was essential.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt the same way, Monica, but it was definitely instructive watching the videos. Ricky has this vast array of documentation of his family's life, as many people do, but with his particular eye as a filmmaker from a young boy, the way that he's seeing the world and the way he's collecting images of his family was really helpful, I think, for everybody. I'll speak for everybody, just to have a template of what it was that he was chasing. And he was always very, very definitive that he didn't want us to pretend to be these people or to mimic them or to do an imitation. Rather, it was more of an attempt to find the characters that he was creating, I suppose, in the semi-autobiographical sense, the semi being, the room to interpret and to reimagine. So it takes the burden off of the actor in that sense. And frankly, it would be the way that I would have wanted to approach it anyway. So that was an interesting thing to know that they were present.
Yeah. We talked about that too, how like we would meet the person and they're actually very different. The way Ricky saw them and wanted them in this film was very different from at least his mother. We didn't meet his father, but a different energy. And he definitely wanted to do something different with it, just based on his own perspective and his own style, I guess.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And I think kind of makes sense for the work, because this film is very much built on impressions and rather than maybe perhaps like the core of the person. Like it's a really interesting way of kind of looking at memory. It's very naturalistic, and like I mentioned, I've never seen anything like it. It's, really impactful. How was it for the both of you as artists, as actors, stepping into the shoes of Richard and Lydia? Did this process of playing these characters, did you reflect on your own childhood experiences and how you kind of saw your parents, or kind of the experience of, did it help you or inspire you to reflect on kind of how you were as a child and what kind of impressions you picked up?
Yeah, for starters, with the perm that we did, I had multiple friends from middle school writing to me going, "You look exactly like your mom," which was weird. I sent her a few pictures from set. She was like, "Whoa, I thought that was a picture of me." It was very interesting. And to like inhabit that, I immediately felt kind of motherly in a way, just because like that's how I grew up with her. It's just crazy what one hairstyle can do, but also I mean, I thought a lot about like, and I still don't necessarily know the answer, but like what would I include in something like this? He had these amazing tiny little, he had his first pair of like real shoes as a baby. They were these like tiny little Reeboks, and they're so cute. I think they were like the actual pair that he had as a kid, like his mom saved them or something. And I just was like, God, like what are the touchstones of my life that I would like save for this? I don't know. I mean, that had to have been such a, I guess a therapeutic process to kind of go through it and write that all down and pick and choose, like what defined him.
Yeah.
I just thought that was so interesting.
You used the word that I was thinking, touchstone. That's exactly the thing that struck me about the memory aspect in terms of looking back and, thinking about my childhood, or I'm a parent now. I have a daughter. And so I have lots of ways that I can see this story. But the thing that I think that struck me most was the little things, the little trinkets, or the little, visions of things that you had, touchstones that unlock a bigger story once you have that stuffed animal in your hand, or you have that poster on the wall that you're remembering. and it's not so much about the thing per se as it is. Sorry, I'm getting a call.
I was like, where'd he go?
Love when that happens.
Mysterious. Well, while we're waiting for him to pop on, it's like I studied method acting in college. I went to the Lee Strasberg Institute, and it's like, for me, this film like put me, if you're familiar with like that, it put me back in the chair of like sense memory exercises, and I felt the same way as you, Monica, watching this. It was like I was like, what would my touchstones be? And I think that I don't know if we'll have the answers ever. I think that we're like continually like learning what has affected us throughout our childhood and like how that plays, but it's just so interesting. Hi, Brian, you're back.
Hi, sorry about that.
Okay. Sorry, what were you were talking about how you have those two different perspectives, being a father yourself and also a son. So that's, yeah, if you'd like
Well,
to.
just to finish the thought, I think you were discussing it as I rudely disappeared there. The idea that the touchstones that you remember, that you can see in your mind's eye, are the thing itself, of course, that make the impact. But really, what they do is they unlock all of the things that those images or those touchstones, are associated with times in your life or moments of celebration or despair or whatever the case may be. So that was the thing that I'm fairly sentimental in that way. I tend to kind of have a strong connection to the things that that were in my life. So that to me rang deeply.
Yeah.
And another thing just on that is, I think it's so interesting in, like you said, mind's eye. I mean, how you remember those things. I feel like Ricky just has such a wonderful way of presenting how memory works, in that dying Easter eggs, you're having a conversation, like in your memory, you remember the dying of the Easter eggs with the content of the conversation. You don't necessarily, remember the way everyone delivered exactly what they said or what their facial expressions were or what they were wearing. Like, you remember what the activity that you were looking at when that conversation was going on. And that was something that I just got really excited by when I read the script, because he laid out every script. It was like a shot list. Like, it was like pristinely organized. And it was just really interesting to watch him like spell out in a way that I hadn't necessarily.
Internet troubles, I think. Oh yeah.
Oh, I have internet troubles?
You went in, but then we got you back. But yeah, it's really fascinating. And I think too, it reminds us as adults too, it's sort of a beautiful way to reflect on your own relationships, to be like, maybe I should have a conversation with my mother about this or that, or my father about this or that, because I had this impression as a child, and like, I thought one way, but I didn't know the context of that situation. I didn't know. Ryan's the photograph in the film where, he remembers it. He's not really sure why it made such an impression on him, but he remembers the window, the light, but what were those two women talking about, which is then revealed in such a beautiful way in the film. But it really opens up, at least for me, space to maybe have those conversations. This is never too late to really understand what was mom going through, what was dad going through, like what were the dynamics back then. Because we can hold on to these memories without having the context, which then shape us for right or wrong reasons. It's really, really fascinating. Before I let you go, because this has been lovely, Richard has a printing business in it, which we all saw that coming. We all saw that it was going to go down the drain once digital came into the picture, but it got me thinking of so many. I mean, this whole film got me thinking of so many lost art forms, products. It's interesting that you, Brian, brought up earlier this idea of recording. And like, I think that in the 80s and 90s, we had so much on record because of the camcorder, because of video. And now it has me thinking, like, I don't have any sort of special moments saved, because of the iPhone, and I don't know if that's a good thing, a bad thing. It just is what it is. It's progress. But is there a lost art form that y'all wish would make a comeback, or something that you're missing these days that you're like, okay, we really need this back?
This is making me think of I don't know why. I was a dancer in college. I studied dance in college, and there was this choreographer named Alwyn Nikolai, and he would physically, and I guess that, I mean, this is the way they edited films as well, but he would I'm gonna get this wrong. He would physically cut and paste recordings together to make his music, and would have to it was like something you could do in the basement or something, like poke holes and pieces of paper to create his lighting effects. It was like he was a master, but it was also totally DIY and I don't really know what I'm saying. I guess I could still do that today, but I think it's so much easier today with technology. I could go on my, GarageBand, my Mac, and splice something together, which wouldn't be, it could be, whatever I would create would be a product of it being a digital product, but
Service.
the collage, sound and video, and I just think that must have yielded very interesting choices that are very different now because it's so accessible. Or the use of film required that you film night in a certain way, that it's very different now in the digital age, and what those limitations impose on you and how that makes an entirely different art piece. I just think it's so interesting.
Absolutely. Definitely. How was this film shot?
It was shot digitally, I believe, with using a long lens to incorporate the idea of a zoom lens, basically. I don't understand the ins and outs of the technical world of filmmaking as well as Ricky or Barton, his DP, would be able to explain. But they had a very particular way of shooting this film for that reason. And if I may, I know you mentioned we're kind of coming to the end, and this is something I just wanted to say, if I could.
Yes, please.
Just in terms of the style of this film, and in the middle of the pandemic, when there wasn't a lot of work to be had, and I like many people, had a lot of time to reevaluate what it is they were doing and why they did it and how they did their work. It was really a bit of a godsend to receive this script that was so incredibly unique and scary in a way to consider doing, because the thing that was so attractive to me was Ricky's singularity of vision, and just how really you could see what it is that he was going to try to achieve. And his other film, Notes on a Disappearance, was very helpful to watch in terms of figuring out his particular style and his approach. So it was, as an artist, trying to figure out, what are the things that I need to do to challenge myself. I was really, really grateful for the opportunity to try to learn a different language, really, in terms of how I approach my job as an actor, functioning within a very particular style and vision that Ricky has for this film and for his work. And that wasn't without its challenges. And I don't mean that in a negative or combative way. It was just more of a how do I, and by extension we, and Mona, you can address this if you like, but how do I live within the framework of this style, but also give it a life that does provide naturalism, as you mentioned, and is that something that he even wants? And if not, is there a way to find a communion of our intentions to try to maybe have a hybrid of what's going on inside the frame, and in terms of the lives that these people are living, to give it, you know, its blood, it's, you know, just to move forward. So that to me was the most fascinating and rewarding part of it, trying to figure out, you know, what language we were speaking, and trying to honor Ricky's vision of this very particular and beautiful storytelling.
Oh, well, I can say as someone, as a big fan of this film, the language that y'all brought was poetic and beautiful, and like I said, created a safe space. And I think that yeah, whatever language it was a beautiful one. Monica, would you like to speak on that, what Brian was just saying?
The words you used, like singularity of vision, I think was that the words you said that I'm misquoting.
No, that's it. I think that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I just fully agree with everything he said. Like, you know, it was so clear to see it on the page, and then also with notes on an appearance, and it just, he has such a, I mean, this is his second film, or second feature at least, and he has such a clear, distinct vision and style, and his collaboration with Bart is incredible. And it's just amazing. I mean, you know, it started with the Venice Film Festival grant, which is a limited budget, and I'm sure his prior film had even less. And, you know, I guess I was trying to explain it to friends, because they were asking me about the project. I was like, yeah, I'm like sleeping on a mattress in my friend's house. Like it's, I was like, no, like watch what he's done. Like, I would send them photos of like stills from his prior movie, and people are like, oh, cool, can't wait to see it. Like, it just immediately evokes a lot of feeling, and also just like, it's just cool. It's an experience to even look at a still. I was looking through the stills from our film last night as well. And yeah, it could be photographs in a gallery or a full film. It's like, it just, I'm running out of words.
Aesthetic. It is such an aesthetic.
It is.
Like
it
the
is.
primary
so
color,
clear.
I feel like it's just such an aesthetic.
And so committed to that, and done so not at the expense of like story or intrigue either, you know, like there's so much there on the page in terms of our, you know, the characters he has and the families and all of those dynamics, without any judgment as well, just sort of like an observation, which is incredible. And when, you know, all of those things coming together, I think just made it really, really special.
Absolutely. I was saying, I had in my notes that this film doesn't preach to you. It rather just presents to you the impact that, you know, the impact. It shows you that how it's just fascinating. And I'm going to let y'all go, but thank you so much for taking the time today.